Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this day, God. Excuse me. Thank you so much for all that you're doing in our lives, God, just for the courage and the bravery of these four people sitting up here to just share their story, to just glorify your name, and to just share with our community what you've done in their lives, God. I'm so thankful for them coming up here, for taking the time to wrestle through the anxious thoughts, through the nerves, and for them just to be brave enough to come up here and share their story, God. I know it takes a lot, but it's all to glorify you and to worship and praise you, God. I pray that whatever they do share, that it does touch at least one person in this room, God, that they walk away encouraged to maybe share their story with somebody in their family or with their friends or in their life group or at work, God. I pray that you just guide our conversation this afternoon, and that we just, again, glorify your name. It's in your name we pray. Amen. Amen. All right. So, excuse me. Jeez. I have a tickle in my throat. Can I get a water? Yes. No, I'm fine. Okay. So, thank you. All right. So, hi. How are you doing? I'm so thankful for all of you. You guys look nervous. Don't be nervous. This is a conversation with your friends. It's going to be awesome. So tell us a little bit about yourself first, for those that don't know you. So introduce yourself, share your name, where you're from, and what you do for work and what you like to do for fun.
Okay, I'm Sarah. I am from here. I was originally in Texas, and then my family moved here when I was 6 months old, and I've been here ever since. I've never left Mesa, which is kind of depressing. Seriously. I teach 9th grade English at a high school. It's my 13th year, and I also I'm a technology coach. So if teachers have issues with their technology or they don't know what to do with the technology, I give them ideas. It's super fun. So that's me.
Okay, so I'm Cassia. I was born and raised in Gilbert. I lived in Tempe back in college. I'm a GIS technician, so I basically make maps for archaeological excavations. And mostly everybody knows that I'm like addicted to hiking, and that's like my favorite thing to do. I'm always exploring, always wanting to go on an adventure.
Hi, I'm Jeanna. I'm from Buffalo, New York. My family's from Lebanon. I moved to Arizona after college in 2000, and I moved back to Buffalo in 2011 when I was pregnant. And go because of court's orders, and it was a nightmare, but God is good, and He's making it all good. I'm here now. I'm so blessed and grateful. What I like to do for fun is to be around good people. I like my mind and my heart to be stimulated, and I love to laugh and anything creative. I need the outdoors, especially here in Phoenix with everybody moving here. Too many people. I'm a massage therapist for 17 years. I'm also an esthetician. I'm in the wellness industry, and kind of in between, kind of shifting gears with my career. So for the past 2 years, I've been driving for Uber, and I believe God is using it as my ministry. It's pretty amazing. Yeah. So, yeah.
Armstrong? That's Armstrong,
Hi.
Sorry. So what's your name? Which we all know now. Where are you from, and what do you do for work, and what do you like to do for fun?
I'm from all over. Recently moved from Texas about 3 years ago. Currently living in Mesa. I work at a engineering firm. We build like prototype boards and stuff like that. So I get to be like super Asian for work. It's like totally awesome. What else?
What do you like to do for fun?
Work out. Yeah. So I totally fasted from everything in my life other than the gym. So now I use the gym to basically prove to the world and like myself, like with God, everything is possible. Because 3 years ago I wasn't supposed to
That's awesome. Okay, so we have 4 questions to go through for each of them. And I want to remind y'all, we have about 2 to 4 minutes to talk for each question, which I know it's tough, but we've got this. I want to make sure that we hear all of your stories, and that you guys can share what you want to share, what God has laid on your heart. So, okay, so the first question for each of you, and you can choose who wants to talk first. What was your life like before you met Jesus?
I can start. So I grew up in the church. My dad is a pastor, and when I was growing up, he was the youth pastor. And so that question, I'm like, there wasn't a time before Jesus, because, yeah, I honestly don't remember a time when I just didn't completely and utterly believe that Jesus was who he said he was, that the Bible wasn't true, and I was willing to fight to the death. If someone was like, no, that's a complete lie, I'm like, but really, is it? No, it's not. So I think for me, there's never been a time, but there was a moment in my life, and that would be, I think, the second question, where my relationship shifted from what it was growing up to what it is now.
Thank you. Who wants to take that next?
I'll
What was
go
your
next.
life?
It's a little longer than that. If I were to describe myself, I would say, in one word, probably rebel. Rebel without a cause. I was, I lived 38 years, almost 39 years without knowing Jesus. And it was tough. I was constantly seeking and searching, and it was really hard. I grew up in a traditional Lebanese family. My parents were traditional, but they came to the States, and my mother did something that Lebanese people don't typically do. She divorced my father, and I'm trying not to get into too much detail, but I was raised pretty much in the kitchen as a servant. I was number 5 out of 6 children, and in high school, in 8th grade graduation, that's when I started to rebel. I smoked my first joint, and I got caught up in the world. I grew up in Buffalo, New York, in the city, and at 15, I started experimenting more with drugs. I sold my first car and ran away, and I was living a very wild and rebellious life, looking for love in all the wrong places, trying to connect with people, and then it took a little while to realize that people aren't like me. You know, I felt I had an innocence about me, even though I was doing a lot of bad things and making bad decisions, and so that kind of corrupted me. And I tried to stay as innocent and be pure as possible, but I was still making really bad decisions. I did a lot of hallucinogenics. Went as far as to like burning holes in my arms and putting frog medicine to elicit this immune response to cleanse me. I got in the wellness industry and I was in school constantly. I could fill a wall with my certificates and diplomas. And knowledge to me was like a drug, because I was searching to fill that void, and nothing could fill it. It was like a drug. It was temporary. I was isolated. I was hermiting myself, and there's a lot more I could say, but I think I'm running out of time. So that's why a rebel without a cause.
That's relatable, I think, or my story too. You know, I was in that place a long time ago as well, where, like you said, I was searching for love in all the wrong places, and I went through a rebellious stage as well. So, yeah.
So I can second that. I guess you would say technically I met Jesus when I was young. I was raised in a Southern Baptist church, so basically from age 0 to about 12 or 13. And it was like every single Sunday in church. My dad was a deacon. You know, I was in a dress every single Sunday for those first 12 years. And then from age 17 to 23 is what I call my rebellious stage as well. I basically I don't know. I just wanted to do my own thing and see how it went. Didn't go well, obviously. But yeah, so I was basically, so I went to a Southern Baptist church when I was younger, and then I actually went to Life Church, the Life Church. Yes, I'm very proud of that. I actually went to Life Church when I was a teenager, and then 17, I was just like, I'm done with this. I'm gonna do my own thing. Graduated high school, went to college. You know how that goes. So I was living in the world through that age, and I was basically trying to fill the void by seeking the approval through men that only Jesus could fill. And it took me till I was about 23 to realize that was destructive and it wasn't going to get me anywhere. And I was living in the world. I knew something was missing, so I would see quotes. So there's this one I always remember. It's faith makes things possible, not easy. And that always spoke to me. So quotes about faith spoke to me. So I feel like that's how he would kind of try to bring me back. But I was still so focused on my rebellion and, doing my own thing. And that didn't go well at all. It was very destructive. It was unhealthy and a lot of unhealthy habits. And yeah, it took me a while to realize that I couldn't live that life anymore. And that's how I got to the second question.
Okay. Armstrong?
All right, so I think it all started when I lost my mommy when I was probably 16 years old, and I like wanted to like just race through life, right? Because it was short. It was like no point in the world. Like, what if I died tomorrow? What would it be for, right? So I think my analogy through life was, well, I was on my Harley probably 4 or 5 years ago, right? So I was just riding down the highway with no helmet, shorts on a 1200, and there was no cars on the highway, so I wanted to know how fast it went. So I just gassed it, and then all of a sudden, before I do it, like the wheels started coming off the pavement, and I was like probably 100, 110, 115, and that's like when I finally slowed down. That was life, right? Like I just wanted to race through it like as fast as I could, like because you just never do. I wanted to live life for here and now.
All right. So yeah, let's get to the second question. How did you come to the realization that you needed Jesus?
Okay, so basically because I was the preacher's kid, I didn't realize at the moment, but looking back, I realized that was my job. My job was to be the preacher's kid because I was very aware that if I messed up in any way, that could be used as ammunition against my parents. There was this fear that because I grew up in a Methodist church, and every year the conference decides if the pastor is going to stay at that church or move. And if they move them to a different church, it's not like to another city, as in like we were in Mesa, and so he'll be in a church at Gilbert. It's you're going to be in Mesa, and you're going to get moved to Yuma or Tucson or Las Vegas, or Flagstaff, Payson, somewhere like that. So there was this great fear that if I was not perfect at all the time, that that could cause problems. And so I did my job. I went to church every week. I went to youth group. There was no question of if I was going to be allowed to not do that because that was my job. And then when I was 21, the conference decided to move my dad down to Tucson. And that was the moment that it sort of made me realize that my family was basically my entire life, my safe harbor. I'm not going to cry. No. Oh, man. Anyways, and so it just, like, my whole family basically abandoned me in a way. They didn't do it on purpose, but, like, my parents moved down there, and my brother was only going into 9th grade, so he had to go down there, and my sister was at U of A, and so I was at Grand Canyon University, and there was, like, I was up here, and they all left me. And so I'm also the oldest, so I tend to want to fix everything. I want to just take on that anger or sadness or whatever. and I couldn't. And so it was probably a couple months trying to go through this, and then had a really weird experience where I had a friend who invited me to a revival. I was like, yeah, history buff, revival, that's kind of cool, like the 1800s. So I was super curious. And it was like, it was good, but it was also weird. So I was sitting there, and there was these people going around, and they're like praying for people, and people falling on the ground. I'm like, this is weird. Like, okay, this is very weird. And so I'm sitting there, and some guy comes up. He's like, I want to pray for you. I was like, that's okay. And then I found myself on the ground looking up. I have no idea what happened, but I was slain in the spirit, and it was a terrifying, terrifying experience. And so I burst into tears because I was like, I don't even know what happened. Like, I was up, and now I'm down, and now I can't stop crying. And so this lady, who's actually my friend's aunt, came up, and I was just like crying and talking about how I'd been abandoned. I just don't understand why God would allow such things to happen. And she said, and it sort of just stuck with me, that people who grow up in the church, the hardest journey that they have is from the head to the heart. So basically, it just occurred to me that my entire life up to age 21, I was just doing my job. Like, I believed very strongly who Jesus was, what the truth was, the Bible was true, but I didn't actually like have a real relationship, like a friendship with God. It was just like, I know who you are, I'm gonna pray for you or pray to you, and like I believe that miracles can happen and things like that. But it was very I guess head knowledge. You really wanted me on your team if we did Bible trivia, because I was the person who was gonna win it for you. So basically I spent like years basically struggling through this and trying to figure out how to do that. Like, cause I was like, but I have a relationship because I believe in God, but it didn't occur, or I didn't really understand it until like years and years later, where I had like stopped going to church because I was like, church was just awkward. Like, I couldn't go back to my home church because they were grieving because they didn't want my parents to leave. And as the preacher's kid, I wasn't allowed to talk about how utterly sad I was and all the issues that were going on within my family, because that could get my dad into trouble. So, anyways, how I realized that I needed Jesus was that moment. It just sort of pushed me into this realization that I didn't actually have a friendship with God. I had head knowledge instead of heart knowledge. So, there you go.
That's beautiful. I love that. Who wants to share next? How you realize you needed Jesus?
I'll go keep the order.
Keep the order.
Um, so last year, I was living a mobile lifestyle. I sold most of my stuff, and I put the rest in storage January 2018. And so I was living a mobile lifestyle. I was staying at a friend's house. He gave me his home in Scottsdale. And I was staying at different friends' houses. I would sleep out of my car, I would travel, we'd go camping, spend the summers in Buffalo. And at the time I had been microdosing on LSD and mushrooms for 6 months. And I gave you a little bit of my background. I had done so much schooling. I was literally in school for all of my life, from middle school to high school, college, and then just online or on-campus courses after that, seeking the answer. So, so I thought microdosing would help open me up to receive. So I had enrolled in this program to learn how to start trading in the stock market. I had invested some money that I didn't really have, but so I studied for a little bit, and then I decided against it, and I dropped it. And after that, I just started to ponder, like, how much school do I need to reach the place I'm trying to reach? I just felt like every path I took was a dead end. I reached a dead end. And it was just unfulfilling, and I started to feel kind of hopeless. And so I prayed. I always had faith. And I believed in God, but I didn't know Jesus. Although I encountered him here and there,
and my hallucinogenic experiences. He was there. But I prayed, and I prayed for an impact and for inspiration. And a couple days later, I was Ubering, and I stopped at Whole Foods for lunch. And the guy sitting across from me, we started talking, and he talked for 3 hours, and I listened for 3 hours. And his story was both impactful and inspirational. He was telling me he went under surgery and the anesthesia didn't work. And he encountered God or the devil, and he made a deal with God. And he mixed in scripture. And that's what I call the moment of my conception. It did something to me. And I went home and I started, this was my temporary home. And I started studying the Bible. I threw away the mushrooms and the acid. I think I had ran out of one of them. I was going to order some more. And my friend wanted me to order some from him. And I told him, I don't do it anymore. I don't support it, so I can't get you any. And I started studying Jesus. And I cried, and I was healing in the way that I was looking to be healed, because I had a pretty traumatic childhood, which is the reason I ran away, and seeking freedom, and ended up in jail a few times, and always in and out of jail, in and out of the hospital. It was just a crazy, destructive path. But God was with me the whole time, and now He makes good of that, and He's using it all for His glory. And when at the time that this happened, I was on the outs with my family. I had years and years of rage and anger towards my mother. She had 6 children, and she raised us on her own. And she went kind of crazy, and we were abused. And on my father's side too, which he happened to be a pastor, a priest in Lebanon as well. So there's 3 preacher's daughters up on this panel. And interestingly enough, I never heard the gospel. And I just want to say that it's so important to talk about God and talk about Jesus. And in my Uber rides driving, I would never know that the majority of my riders were Christians unless I brought it up. And I just think it's so important that we talk about God everywhere, any opportunity we have to bring it up, because I went through a lot of hell. Thank God I'm still alive and well. Alive, because there were times where I should have been dead or raped, but thank God for my mom's prayers. So I divert, but to get back to the answer, that's when I realized I needed Jesus, because I was crying and healing like no one else. Nothing comes close to Jesus. He is the answer. He's everything. And that's when I realized, and that's when I got good with my family again. And they, one of my brothers says, they're not believers. We're still working on them, praying for them. One of them said, I never thought I'd say this, but thank you, Jesus, because I got my sister back. And He's real. And so that's when I realized is when I was healing from all those happy tears of joy, sobbing, drool on the floor, and I still do a lot, every day probably. That's when I realized I needed Jesus.
I love that story that you shared with just like encountering that guy at the Whole Foods and how he just started talking to you and mixed in scripture with his, with his story, sharing his story with you, and that was a turning point for you, a huge turning point for you. And went home and you're like throwing this away, open up the Bible, and that's awesome. I love it.
For me, I basically just got to a point where the only way I can explain it is I felt like I was drowning in my destructive cycle, and I felt like I was covered basically in just chains to my sin and my past, and I just got to a point where I was done with it. I couldn't live that way anymore, and I was, let's say, I'm seeking love in all the wrong places. I was depressed. I was having health issues, and I was just done because it was drowning. And so my parents actually told me about a young adults group at a church near our house, and they had kind of just opened. And so I was like, okay, well, I know something's missing. I think it's God, so maybe I'll just go and see how it, what happens. And so I went to the first meeting I went to. You know, when you like get back into faith, and everyone's like, "Do you know Jesus?" And you're like that, like ugly, crying, sobbing, like just so embarrassing. um, and so like the first meeting I met this group of people, I just like totally broke down, and they literally said, "Can we pray for you?" And this sounds kind of maybe superstitious or whatever, but they laid hands on me, and I felt like their hands had electricity in it, and that, like I said, sounds kind of weird, but that's the only way I can explain it. And I just had this overwhelming feeling of, you're not defined by your mistakes, or um, it's not your identity. Your sin is not your identity. Your identity is through me. And so that's just the moment I rededicated my life. That was June 2014. And yeah, it's been great ever since. And it was still a struggle, like even, after rededicating myself, like getting those chains off, like breaking free from my habits, not falling back into it. But yeah, I would say that's the moment, the exact moment that I rededicated.
So I grew up. My parents were Buddhist. I kind of knew Christianity a little here and there from people inviting me to church and stuff. But like when I realized I needed Jesus was this was about 3 or 4 years ago. I just got into life altering wreck. Was in a coma for 2 weeks, in a hospital for a month. Couldn't walk. Like left the hospital, took 2 steps, and was like dog tired. And I just like remember breaking down in the middle of the walkway. Wife wanted to divorce like 3 months after I got out of the hospital. Almost lost my kids because the coma made me crazy, I guess. Spent my life saving on divorce and making sure I got to see my kids. So it's just like the bottom of the pit, water filling. And it's just like when I realized like I'm not strong.
So many of us can get to the bottom of the pit, right? And that's when we're like reaching up and we're like, God, I need you in my life. Like, it takes so many like different stories of us getting there, looking for love in the wrong places, or just, coming to the realization that like, you need to change from the head knowledge to your heart knowledge, and like I need a relationship with Jesus, or losing everything. But God is He's there, like in the entire time, just like reaching down for us to just draw near to Him. So share how you have committed your life to Jesus.
So after my parents left me, I spent I think I mentioned this, like years trying to find a church, because at the moment my big rebellion as a college student was not going to church. I was like, finally I can sleep in, no one's telling me what to do, so I'm not going to go to church. I would not tell my parents this because that would be bad. Well, I didn't want them to be disappointed in me. And I would go with them if ever I was at home, which was frequent because I like my parents. But after they left, I spent probably, I don't know, 3, 4 years trying to go to a different church, and then feeling like awkward because this maybe sounds weird. Like the church I was at, we were there for 21 years, and so there were people who knew me growing up, and it wasn't like a humongous church. So if I walked into the door, the sanctuary, like everyone's like, "Hey, Sarah, how's it going?" And I have little old ladies coming up and giving me a hug and talking about how I was cute as a kid. And so it was really, thank you. It was really hard going to a different church and having no one talk to me. And so I I don't know, it was a lot of struggling between trying to figure out what I was supposed to do and going to a church, but then not finding a church, not feeling like that connection. And so I went to Mission Community Church because they had a young adult group that's similar to this. And I think that was the moment where all of a sudden everything just sort of clicked. I was like, I wanted to go to church, not because that's what I was supposed to be doing, because that's who I am. I'm like, tell me what I'm supposed to do, and I'll do it for the most part. And so going to church, and then I had a really small like Bible study group, and that sort of changed my perspective because we didn't follow like a lesson plan, a study book. We literally were like, what questions do we have? And then we just dug through the Bible, and it was sort of crazy because I'd never been taught, I guess, how to really analyze and dig into it, which is so much fun. And I do it as an English teacher, but I've just never done it with the Bible and like writing in my Bible. I was like, and I finally I was like, this is actually pretty cool, like highlighting, and it's fun looking back and seeing like what I wrote or what I highlighted and things like that. So I think with committing myself, like I was always committed. It was just like now it's taking steps to create a relationship with God versus me just doing things because I knew it was correct, and that's what I was supposed to do. So
Is this the last question?
Nope.
Okay.
How you committed your life to Jesus?
How did I commit? Well, I guess it was probably. So I'm not sure if I understand in what ways, but I'll just talk about it. So I got baptized, and that's how I. When did I get that? Almost about a year later in April. So the conception happened in April 2018, and I got baptized, and I felt like that was my wedding day. I felt like I got married. So that's the I don't know, the juncture, if that's the right word. But how I'm doing it is by being obedient as much as I can, and the things that I'm unclear about, I'll research and I'll ask God, and I'll go with my conscience. It's just a relationship with Jesus. Um, and I did that from the get go. I practice being like Jesus. It's really hard at times. I mean, 38 years of life of being so strong-willed and building my life around um, what I thought I needed. It's, so I'm in the process, but I feel committed more than I've ever felt committed to anything. Actually, that's a big issue in my life. Is I always had an issue with commitment. So I've committed, yeah, through my baptism and my lifestyle.
That's a huge step. Getting baptized is a huge step. That's awesome that you did that. Right away. Sometimes it takes us a little while. It took me a little while. I was saved and I got baptized here at Cornerstone, but it takes us a little while to, hey, like I want to invite the Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit is like such an amazing friend that convicts us of so many different things and that kind of just whispers wisdom and just like love to us in a different way. And yeah, that's awesome. Armstrong. Oh, Cassia, sorry. Out of turn.
I was raised Southern Baptist, and I hope this isn't offensive, but it's more, at least where I went, it was more religious. It wasn't like I didn't have a relationship with God, even maybe when I was at Life Church because I was still young. And so, kind of switching my mind, how my mind thought about it, like to actually have a relationship versus just Christian in by name. And so when I started going to that group, I basically just dove head first. I super involved in the church events, life group. I joined the life group, and I was baptized in April 2015. And honestly, the way I can explain my baptism was I physically felt like everything was washed off of me. And I have met people that are, didn't have that kind of experience, but it was the most intense and crazy experience. I physically felt like my, those chains were like washed off. And yeah, and so I knew I needed to do it. And so I just kept, even if it made me uncomfortable, exposing all these, like, ripping up these roots and finding all of these vulnerable spots and getting used to, like, bursting into tears all the time, Um, so I knew I needed to do it. And so I just kept pushing for it. Even when it was really hard to break my habits, I recognized that I was doing it, and I would pull back and be like, I can't do this. And then I would go, like, straight to the Bible. And I was very intentional about reading the Bible and doing devotionals and, making friendships with fellow believers. And yeah, it was a process, but it was definitely a process, but that's how I committed my life.
Okay. Armstrong.
So when I was reading this question, I thought it said when, not how.
You can share when and how.
All right, so my when was like back to that story, right? I was in the bottom of the pit, and I was in church. I just lost everything, and then there was a church about this size, and the pastor made everybody look down, and he said, with all eyes closed and all heads bowed, if you have anything to confess, like, come up here, get on your face, and just get it right with Jesus. Nobody's looking. And I literally, like, felt something pull me up. I'm like, what are you doing? Sit back down. There's a lot of people. And, like, literally something just pulled me up there, and, like, I cheered up in the middle of this big church. And then all of a sudden, like, magic happened, right? Like, he sent me a mentor. And, like, this older guy in his 60s was like, what are you doing? Where are you going? And I was like, I don't know. I'm lost. I don't know where I'm going. And he's like, follow me. And, like, that was, like, the beginning of this journey of Christ. Was him sending me help.
That's awesome. Having a mentor is huge. I think, having somebody that you can go to, whether for me, like an older sibling or somebody in life group. Or, life groups can definitely hold you accountable. But having somebody that can mentor you, whether it's somebody super, super older than you or somebody who's just wiser than you, that can be your wise counsel. And when you have questions or need prayer, need them to intercede for you, they're there for those reasons. But having a mentor is huge, I think, in committing, and all the reasons that you guys shared and how you committed your life to Jesus. So let's get to the fun stuff. The difference Jesus has made in your life. Let's share and glorify what he has done in your life.
I think with me, it's definitely more of a relationship, because there have been times in my life that I'm, like, very irritated at what has been going on. Like, give you an example of this. Like, starting in July of this year, it was like one thing after another after another. Like, in July, I discovered a leak underneath my house, which then required my walls, my ceiling, and 3 rooms to get ripped out, and then the plumbing replaced, and, like, that was an entire month of, like, figuring that out and dealing with insurance and, like, the people who were coming to repair it. It was highly stressful. And then in August, the 3rd day of school, I was rear-ended as I was driving to school, and my car was totaled, and so all of that, I'm like, so there are many times it's like, gosh, God, what are you doing to me? Like, I know that there's, like, a plan for my life, but this is ridiculous. You need to stop doing this to me. I'm so irritated. And my students were, like, not so great either, and I was like, give up. Like, I give up. What are you doing to me? So I think before this, like, whole relationship, I probably would have felt bad about being annoyed at God, and gone, no, that's not a Christian thing to do. Like, you need to be at peace and go, there is a good thing that's going to come out of everything. And that is true, and I do believe it. But at the moment, it's like, seriously? Like, what? What is happening? What are you doing to me? What's your plan? So I think it's more of the relationship part where I can, like, have a conversation and be irritated or angry. Like, when I was going to share this. when you become 30, I feel like you have this like midlife crisis, especially when you're 30 and you're not married. And my younger sister's married and has kids, and so like there was a moment when okay, I'm super dramatic in my head. It doesn't usually come out verbally, but in my head it's super dramatic. So after my sister had told me she was pregnant and she's like a couple years younger than me, like I went home and I threw myself on the bed like a Disney princess, and I was like, "What is wrong with me? I'm so messed up." So, yeah, before this, yeah, it's kind of embarrassing, but it's true. It is true, and it's normally it's normal. But anyway, so I think before that, like I would have felt like that, like I'm not allowed to like share my irritation with God because He's God and there shouldn't be any irritation. So yeah, I think it's more of that relationship part. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, so many ways that Jesus has transformed me in my life. Relationships are a big one. Um, he's been coming through over and over and over again with financial miracles. I mean, it's like money coming out of thin air. And it really, not that, not that I believe that he's going to provide for me. I don't want to start to psychoanalyze, but he has come through for me in that way. Um, I prayed for good godly friends. I have one solid one, which to me is good, but I'm my environment and the people I surround myself with now are godly people, and it's amazing. It makes me feel more normal. Before, I always felt out of place. I felt just different. And now I just feel like I fit in better, which is a good feeling because I was always the black sheep of the family. Well, I still am, but in a good way. Since they're not believers, I'm still the black sheep, right?
Yeah.
So, um, the biggest thing is not necessarily circumstantial changes. It's the world I live in my mind and my heart. I'm a lot more um, merciful and forgiving, and he lends me his virtues, his virtuous nature. And I have a long way to go, but he's put me through the ringer to the point where I wanted to buy a gun because I felt so unsafe driving because there's a lot of reckless road ragers out there and they attack me when I'm driving. Literally, like try to like side swipe me, and they're very aggressive men. And I felt I was feeling really hopeless because this is my job. It's my and um and it's just a lot of ugliness. You know, I'm very sensitive. So when somebody feels anger around me, like I pick up on it. I don't make it my own anymore, but I can just feel their world. And I when it's happening so often, kind of it affected my spirit really bad. So I was like, oh my goodness, like I'm really thinking about buying a gun, you know, just to feel safe. And it was, I mean, I literally just I surrendered. I dropped. I was like, God, take it. You know, I can't handle it, and I don't want to have to buy a gun. And I know that you're my protector. And after that, this was maybe like a month ago. He changed me. I'm a different person since then. Still in the process, but I have more faith in him then. So it's my internal world that he really has changed, and I'm learning how to walk now. Just barely a baby, I'm just learning how to walk, but I'm really looking forward to the future. He's done this in my life in a year and a half. I can only imagine.
Oh man, he's made all the difference. I feel like I can't even put it into words, but I I feel like where I'm at this day, I would have never seen where that I would be at this point. I never saw that I would be where I am now in 2014, and I feel like I am thriving more than I ever have in my entire life, and it's all because of him. And he's worked through so much. He's broken me. He's taught me how to fully trust in the unknown and have patience in his plan, even if they're total opposites of my plan. And oh man, he's given me so much courage. He brought me into this room, and I didn't want to come to YP. I knew about it, so it took me about 6 months to finally get up the courage to come. And that was all because of him. I would have never been able to do that on my own. And he's just blessed me with such an amazing community, a sisterhood, amazing life group, and fellow nature lovers that I can go out and hike, and we can like worship God together through nature, and that's really awesome. He also has. I used to struggle very bad with chronic anxiety, and I can fully say that he completely cured me of that. And it was very difficult, but he got me through it. And oh man, he just made the world of difference. I know my identity is through him. It's through no one else. No one will ever satisfy me the way he does. And I know my worth. I know I'm a absolutely adored, beloved daughter of the King. And it's looking back, like just thinking about sharing my story for this, looking back at where I was when I first started, and I couldn't even fathom that my identity would be in him, that he's a father, he's a friend. Like, you can yell at him if you need to, you can cry to him, you can you can like get on your knees and thank him. Like, he can take it, and he wants to hear everything. And he's such a good father, so loving. And I could just reflecting on that, I kind of feel like I want to tell everybody. This is like the first time I've actually shared my story in front of a large group, and I'm just so thankful for all he's done in my life. And I wouldn't be who I am today if I hadn't have been through all of that darkness. I wouldn't be where I'm at today. And so I'm very thankful for it, even though it was a really hard time in my life. I'm thankful to him for it. I'm thankful that he gave me the courage to come to YP, because it's like the best group and like the best thing that's ever happened to me, honestly. And so, yeah, he's just done beautiful things, and he's so good, and there's nothing that he can't get you through. Absolutely nothing. And he is there. He's your shoulder. He's going to get you through it, and it's going to be absolutely beautiful, and you'll be able to look back and see how far you've come, and it's going to be absolutely incredible. Amen. All right, Armstrong.
All right. I think it's just like when Peter was walking on water, right? Jesus came up and then he fell, and like he helped pick him back up. So I think that's like the biggest thing that he's made in my life. I think the biggest thing happened in Acts is like all these whispers, right? You're not strong enough. You're not good enough. And then you hear God saying, "Who made you?" It's like, let's go to the bar and get beers. It's like, no, I'm doing a Bible study, or I can't. I'm going to the gym because I'm fasting from going out. And so like people like look at you like, who the heck are you? Like, where's Armstrong? Who is this dork that you let in? And it's like, I finally got a guiding light. It's like, if you know me and directions, I'm horrible. Okay, he's my GPS. Like, I GPS everything. And like, God is that now. It's just like, where do you need to go in life to live your best life? And it's through God, because I've lived my own life for 30-something years, and it turned into carnage, right? And then, like, just letting him guide me for these last few years has been like tremendous. Even like through the hardest times, it's like knowing that, okay, you have my best interest at heart. And then it always works out. So.
Awesome. Amen. Give it up for them. Woo! Give it up for them. All right. I love that. I just got back from a conference, a women's leadership conference, and one of the speakers was talking about, are we truly living our best life? Are we truly living the life that Jesus has called us to, that we are worthy of, that he has given us? And so we are, meant to share our story. We are meant to tell someone about Jesus and what he's done in our lives, whether you're a baby Christian, whether you grew up in the church, whether you had some traumatic event happen in your life where you hit rock bottom. We are meant to live our best life worthy of the calling that Jesus has called us on, and to just share your story. So give it up for them one more time. All right.